Hello, my name is Cassandra Williams from Educational Innovation 360. I'm so excited to have you. So I love to just learn, and I'm a learner, and I think we all are. But what I want to share with you is this presentation that I just witnessed. Is very good, but it was by 𝐥𝐢𝐤𝐞. She presented, but I modified it to meet the needs of my stakeholders, which are you, principals, right? And so what I want to do is really dig into what works, and how could we support principals vertically and horizontally by planning? And I always call it, how are you a step above the district, right? To dictate terms, to create norms for your own school system and own school program. So what I do is I work with principals in private and charter schools to expedite student achievement. And in smaller districts, you don't tend to have the big overhead, but you also don't have the abundance of researchers, experts, just giving you ideas on how you can move the needle. So here is a presentation. I hope you enjoy. How do we build the capacity of our school? I always ask this in any school that I work with, any school that I deliver for. And so how do we compare our school with this neighboring school? Because typically, if we're in the same community or district, we're always having similar issues and we can help each other. And so I always start with state indicators. What indicators are in the state that can help me identify areas? And so I dig, research, and I collect information across the state. And in this research, we're going to, of course, use quantitative data, just in identifying areas that where we are and what is the change that needs to happen to move the needle in our schools. And I typically use some type of color coding system. That way it can compare school A to school B. And if school B has areas that they want to work on, that may be the same area we're working on, so we can work on it together. And then I look at the local indicators, right? And then I always go to the board, right? What are the tools that the board's using to evaluate if the school is consistent? We collect quantitative and qualitative data when we're looking at change. And then we look at the standards to see if the standards are not met and really track our progress over time. So now, what do we need to move the level indicators? So I tend to create two separate level indicators, one for status, right? What status are we now? And then one for change. How do we move the needle and how do we change? So here are the 5 categories that I've created, very high to very low. And then when we talk about change, has it increased significantly or have we declined in our area of focus? So I typically use color for the change aspect. And then I look and kind of see, besides for color, of course, number, data, information, but color to see where we are moving the needle and have we improved. And then schools can compare their change, which is the performance, over time, right? And if the change has not moved, then they can color code it by red, yellow, orange to identify which areas that we are focusing on and which areas need the growth that we're focusing on as well. Now, safe, right? We all like to be in the safe zone or make progress towards our goal. And so we consider this area in the middle our kind of safe zone, right? So we're taking these targeted populations and we're moving the needle. Have we changed? Have we increased? Are we maintained? Have we declined in certain areas? Typically, I use this with schools with students that about at least over 150 students, so a little bit bigger schools. We target groups that need to be supported. Typically, it's like usually a group of 30 in a specific category that we see there's a need. And then, so it can apply to anything your board deems that's necessary, anything that you feel that you need to target. It may be homelessness, it may be suspension rate, graduation rates, absenteeism, which is big, especially now, college and career readiness indicators, right? How do we disaggregate the data to see who's ready for college? And then we love to talk about horizontal and vertical planning, right? So horizontal across the school districts and vertical across the grade levels and as such. Okay, last but not least, who do we identify? I already underlined some of these areas because not all schools are working on the same thing. And so we typically, like I said, we look at the state indicators and we look at some of our areas that may be something we're noticing in the data, whether it be state, um, EL students, socially economic disadvantaged students, our EL students, students with disability, it may be homeless, it may be foster youth. We are seeing a tremendous height in homelessness, and this is our target area, right? These are the areas that we want to monitor and make sure we're making improvements. And so some of the information involves, like I said, looking at groups to where there's 15 or more of that population, and seeing if there's a change. And if there's a change of students that move in and out of that group fluid, like, right, if there's less than 8, then that's an area that we want to be wary of, but that's no longer a focus area. So we have moved the needle in that area. And so when we're talking about growth and change, we have to look at our populations and see who we identify. Now, last but not least is the long-term goal. The long-term goal and the long-term effect is something we definitely need to look at, because this is the bread and butter. This is what we look at to identify the specific areas of change, right? And so looking at the color code in each individual, school, right? And then looking at the status, have they maintained their status? Right? And then looking at the graduation rates or the indicators that we said or deemed that's very important that we need to look at. And then taking this data and just constantly revisiting it and seeing what we could do to move forward to have an extraordinary school. So I hope you enjoyed. This is a quick presentation that I thought was great and I want to share because, like I said, I work with private and charter schools, and although there are wonderful people working in those systems, sometimes they don't have the resources necessary for these big research school districts, and we have to make a need ourselves. So bye for now. Educational Innovation 360, Cassandra Williams.